the star at its rising, and have come to do him homage. Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. When Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of King Herod, behold, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We saw his star at its rising and have come to do him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was greatly troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it has been written through the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, since from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and ascertained from them the time of the star's appearance. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search diligently for the child. When you have found him, bring me word, that I too may go and do him homage." After their audience with the king, they set out. And behold, the star that they had seen at its rising preceded them until it came and stopped over the place where the child was. They were overjoyed at seeing the star. And on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and did him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed for their country by another way. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, I did check before Mass, and the wise men definitely did arrive. Sometimes it happens that they get delayed, you know. I've celebrated Mass a few times, not here, of course, at St. Catharine, but elsewhere, and I looked over and the kings weren't there yet. Presumed they were coming by air and were held up at Newark or someplace like that. But these are beautiful figures in this crib scene here. Did you ever take a good look at them sometime? Monsignor Looking, my predecessor here, got those. I understand they were very expensive, and they're very alive, and they're very expressive. They're beautiful. It's a beautiful scene that kind of comes alive when you look at it. You know, sometimes you look at manger scenes and everybody looks dead in them. Not here. It's a beautiful set. So, you know, you may have heard me say, I think I said the 10:30 Mass here at Christmas. This year we have so many Masses, it's hard to know where you are half the time. But I made the analogy between the wise men, and I guess I was speaking to, you know, the throngs of people who come to Mass at Christmas. And we were run off our feet, literally, at St. Margaret's and here at St. Catherine's, especially on Christmas Eve. It's unbelievable the numbers of people that showed up. And I was making the analogy, you know, that the three wise men or the three kings made a sudden appearance at the birth of Jesus. You know, they came and then they were gone, and we never heard of them again. So I made the analogy between the wise men or the kings and those people who just come to church at Christmas or at Easter. They come and then they're gone, and we don't see them for another year. But the following year they're back again. And it's important that they're there. It was important that the wise men were there, even though they didn't stick around. They came and they disappeared. And there is a phenomenon, of course, nowadays especially, and probably with all the scandals and difficulties and abuse in the church and everything else like that, the numbers of Catholics who belong to that large group who believe but don't want to belong is probably growing, sadly, unfortunately. But I think what is important, and what I would hope is true, that all those Catholics who come to Mass at Christmas, the thousands of them literally, that they still believe, they still have that spark of faith, they still believe in the Christ child, they still believe in Jesus, but they've had it with the institutional church, you know. And there's a message in that, like, for all of us. I guess probably you who go to Mass regularly, who come to church every Sunday, I'm pretty sure you have made that distinction in your own mind, or you wouldn't be here. Your faith and your hope and everything is not based on the institutional church, on the human face of the church, but on the divine reality behind it all, the reality of Jesus, that you have that connection with Jesus, that you have that relationship with Jesus, and that's why you come to worship, you know. And the other stuff, scandalous and terrible as it is, has always been a part of the human face of the institution of the church, always. There have always been scandals and there's always been difficulties, because wherever there are human beings, there are weaknesses. And the human side of the church, you know, is made up of human beings who, as we know, so sadly, are not just weak, but even at times downright evil. So that's the story of the wise man. That's the analogy, I guess, I was making at Christmas, and I think it's true also. Now, talking about the Feast of the Epiphany and the wise men, we're told they came from afar and they followed the star, of course, and they journeyed. They were on a journey. And when they finished the journey and they came to where Jesus was, we're told they went back by a different way, by a different route. And you know, the Feast of the Epiphany comes every year, of course, obviously, at the beginning of the new year. It's a time when we get a little more reflective, I suppose. We tend to be a little bit more like that at the beginning of January, because we're saying goodbye to the year that's gone by. We're saying goodbye, in this case, to 2018. We've come, you could say, that's been our journey for the past 12 months. And now we're headed out in a new direction. We're headed out in a new journey. And if necessary, if we need to, we can change the direction in which we're going. And when you start out on that process of thinking, it's always worthwhile to reflect a little bit on where we've come from. It's a bad thing to live in the past, even if you're Irish, but it's a good thing to keep an eye on the rear view mirror as you move ahead. Now, I hope when you look back on 2018, I hope you recognize that it was a mixture of positives and negatives. There were it was a difficult year in many respects. It was difficult for us Catholics, of course. I needn't mention that. Politically, it was a difficult year for all of us in our country. And I'm sure when you look back on 2018, you have your own stories. You have your own memories. And I'm sure things have happened. Maybe somebody you really loved and cared for died and passed on. Maybe some very difficult things happened in the course of 2018. But I do hope that when you look back, that you'll also recognize the good things that were a part of the year. Because there's always a mixture. Life is just like that, always. The positives and negatives are always intermingled in together. So that any inventory of the past year should include a liberal sprinkling of good memories and good thoughts. I like the attitude of the elderly man who said, when everything is considered, it still comes out a beautiful world. There's something good about most things. Even some thorn bushes have roses on them. So when we set out towards 2019, let's not forget to carry with us the grateful memories of the good things, the good events, the good times, the good experiences that we've had in the past year. And I'm sure when you look back, you'll see some failures, some frustrations. I know they're a part of everybody's life. But no matter how good you are, you can't live in this world without some degree of hurt and disappointment. The important thing is how we look at those things, how we deal with them, how we handle them, how we handle the disappointments and the hurts. Because those are the things, those are the things that can end up causing you to become bitter and resentful. And those are very self-defeating emotions or experiences. So I hope you will be able to resist the temptation. And as we get older, the temptation sometimes becomes stronger to become cynical. Become cynical about all kinds of things. There's a lot of cynicism around, from politics to religion and to life itself. I always remember the truth that I learned, that came home to me very emphatically in a workshop that I did one time, when somebody made the statement that the cynical person, and we all know some people who are very cynical, and this is another way of looking at the person who's cynical, especially if it's an older person. But you don't have to be older to be cynical, of course. But the cynical person very likely one time was an idealistic person. And the idea, and probably the more cynical the person is, maybe the more idealistic they were one time, perhaps when they were young, and became disappointed. But remember this, all the pain, all the disappointment in the world, all the hurt in the world can never turn you into a cynical and bitter person unless you cooperate. Of course, then we hear that the wise men asked themselves, after they visited Jesus, they said, where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? And we all know that we can't get away from the fact that we're all going somewhere. In this way, I've heard the analogy of like that life is like being in a boat on a river. And we're all moving along. And it doesn't matter how lethargic you are. It doesn't matter how depressed you are. It doesn't matter how passive you are. The boat is moving. And you're being carried along anyway. Now, whether you're in the driver's seat and driving the boat, or whether you're just sitting back and going with the flow, you are going someplace. Remember Alice in Wonderland? Remember she decided one day when she was lost, she decided to ask the cat, where? She said, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? And the cat replied, well, that depends a great deal on where you want to go. And Alice replies, well, I don't care much about that. To which the cat replies, well, then it doesn't matter which way you go. But Alice insists, well, I do want to get somewhere. And the cat answers, oh, you're sure to do that. You know the expression, the unexamined life is not worth living. And it can happen so easily, the days go into weeks, the weeks into months, the months into years, and life gets away without any serious planning or direction. And we try to fool ourselves very often this time of the year by making resolutions. I say we try to fool ourselves, maybe that's a bit cynical, isn't it? But we make our resolutions for the new year, our New Year's resolutions, or our New Year wishes. We set our heart on something, and we deeply wish for something, and sometimes we think by making a resolution it'll happen. But you have to take it a step beyond that, of course. Making a resolution or making a wish is a great thing, but it has to be accompanied by choosing something else also. Choosing the road, choosing the path, choosing the way in which you're going to accomplish the wish or the resolution that you have. that leads to the goal. So if you want to be a better person, if you want to have a stronger and improved character as you begin the new year, but you go back to your old little habits of selfishness and dishonesty and compromise, you never get there. And you realize it probably by the beginning of February, if not before that. You get nowhere just by wishing or dreaming. You get there by going on your knees at the beginning of the year and by asking God for the grace and for the strength, and then redirecting yourself on the road you want to travel, and like the wise man, making a deliberate choice and a deliberate decision to travel by another route. Amen.